How you doing?
Well, we're doing that the next week. So, but really what we're doing is we're just placing it right next to this. Really what you're is.
So every time you run the license plate, it comes back to my phone.
Three people graduation here on my mind establishment.
I told me.
It was yellow.
And again.
I've never seen. I'm serious.
Her U-Haul is on, she don't know where it is with her stuff.
I did something.
Right,
That's the issue I got.
I guess my really issue is. It came from.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Do we got any information on that?
Because that's what. That's what everything else is doing. So what we're doing is we're like. It's, we're just doing so we can slide that in. Chapter 6, whatever chapter 7. Chapter 7.
We'll call the meeting to order. We'll have Pastor Hoy come lead us and do the invocation. And following that, we'll have Bears and Flag from Commissioner Singer. Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we welcome you here this evening. We welcome you into our lives. We welcome you into our everyday existence. Please may you bring us closer to you. May we follow you and lead us closer to be you. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, can we call the roll?
Commissioner Adams?
Present.
Commissioner Harrelson? Present. Commissioner Henderson? Here. Commissioner Henry? Present. Commissioner Isa?
Present.
Commissioner Jones?
Present.
Commissioner Singleton?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats?
Present. Is there any citizens' comments?
Can we have citizens comment after we finish, at the end of the meeting?
Is there any citizens' comment?
Mr. Michael Hoy.
Thank you.
Put my name on it, please. Thank you.
Good evening. Just want to remind everyone that tomorrow is October 1st, one month.
Please state your name.
Michael Hoy. Tomorrow's October 1st, 1 month from then is November 1st. My brother's keeper will be here in the city of Benton Harbor. There's been a request that has been made. I don't know if it's been granted for monies to become available. We only have 4 weeks before us to get that money accountable for and voted on. So can we get that on somebody's agenda? Can we bring it through a council that we did before? I don't know what's going on with this, but we only have 4 weeks to put this together and make that become a reality. They will be here. They're coming in from Detroit, Saginaw, Flint, everywhere. They'll be at the Grand Upton Hall, Friday, November 1st, from 9 o'clock to 4. It's free. It's open to the community, founded by the Obama Foundation. So there's money that was supposed to be set aside. I don't know where it's at. I don't know what's happened with it. I know it was voted on once, but I don't know what's going on with that. So we need to get that taken care of on our calendar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. James Duncan.
Okay. The first thing on the agenda, I would just like for it to be explained. I would rather talk about it after you guys have discussed it. But I like some understanding as to what it is, what is it really saying, and what you guys expect to do about it. Adopting marijuana establishment is what I'm talking about. Can you guys give us some kind of understanding before you guys start making decisions for the citizens? If not, I'll just wait my turn.
Thank you.
And I will have something to say at the end of the meeting if it's not in the favor of the citizens. I will say it and let the chips fall where they may.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. We'll get back to you on that.
And that's the last one.
That's the last one. Thank you. Consent calendar items. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar items?
Let's do approve.
That's not.
Separate.
Yeah.
You want to separate them?
Yeah,
Wait, what?
we'll separate that one item for
The one item, if you don't separate the discussion, then
What item is
vote
that?
on the consent calendar item.
motion to
So,
approve.
is there a motion to there's
We
a
don't need a
separate?
motion to separate, or we just need to separate.
I'm gonna separate. Thank you. All right, so being separate this,
So now we just need a motion to approve, when you can open up for a
make a
discussion.
motion to approve the adopt ordinance to prohibit Mary Hanna establishments within its boundaries pursuant to the Michigan Regulation and Taxation Act, Section 6.1, within the city of Benton Harbor. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
It has been motioned by Commissioner at Large Mary Alice Adams. It's been supported by Commissioner Edward Isom. Discussion. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Pro Tem C. I'm shocked that this is even on the agenda, because when it came through committee months ago as legislative chair, we couldn't get it to come to the council for a vote, knowing that it was going to be approved and was by the residents of the state of Michigan. Let me say this, I don't know where the spelling comes from or the pronunciation, but it seems like cocaine's name is respected and all other drugs' names are respected. And I think that this one should be respected as well. And it should say recreational marijuana. because this has nothing to do with medical, am I right?
You are correct.
And it did not go through the proper procedure for it to be before us this evening, and it's an ordinance. And with that, does it not take, the same thing that was requested for medical marijuana in the form of 2 public hearings?
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner Mary Alice Adams. City Manager,
Mr. Chair, I'd like to have the city attorney explain the reason for this being on the agenda.
all right, well, thank you. I appreciate that, Commissioner. Appreciate that, City Manager, but the proper process and channels still, we cannot circumvent them. If it takes if it takes a public hearing to do it, we're changing the ordinance, I'm right, this is changing the order, we're making an ordinance.
Adopt, change, doesn't matter.
Go ahead, City Attorney.
It does not require a public hearing. A zoning ordinance does, yeah, correct, but the city ordinance does not. The medical marijuana, we didn't, the city commission wasn't required to hold public hearings, and I don't know if Benton Harbor did. A lot of communities did just to get citizen input, but it wasn't required.
Did this go through committee?
This, I think, was put on the agenda by the city manager, which is, I believe, allowed to, or the mayor, I'm not
The
sure.
mayor did not put this on.
City manager.
I think it behooves us to go through proper channels and bring this to committee. Everything else we vote on comes through committee. This is the governing body of the city, and I do respect the fact that the city manager did bring this forth. But if there's still some questions, I think we need to circumvent this. This came before this same board and we voted it down. I don't know how it got fast tracked, but did not this same thing come before us before? Maybe I'm wrong.
And the reason why it's here tonight is tomorrow is the deadline in which the state starts accepting applications. Again, this is something that would allow us, the city, to create an ordinance or zoning.
Well, basically this says we opt out.
Well, but you're allowed to opt back in at any time.
This legislation right here says we opt out. So why don't we just put opt out instead of playing games with word verbiage? Because that's what it is, we're opting out,
Correct,
right?
correct. I mean, at the moment, yeah, correct.
Okay, but to opt out means that we're actually opting in. To accept,
No, we're opting out.
to opt in,
This is to prohibit recreational marijuana,
okay, can we, Honorable Chair, if I
or at
may?
least for the business aspect.
It won't be allowed in the city, but prohibited.
I
Hold it.
don't,
We're not gonna do this tonight. We're gonna stay in order. We're gonna move this meeting fast. Commissioner Adams has the floor right now. She has a hand raised. Please respect her.
Being that we can opt in and accept whenever we choose, being the governing body, I think that it would, in Pro Tem C's famous words, it would behoove us to do this in a manner in which, when it is allowed, that the medical marijuana establishments would be of grave help in keeping things in a better and orderly manner when that time comes, with the laws and stuff, us really not knowing what those laws are going to be until December. And I thought that we had until November the 1st to opt in or out. But I would really like to wait and see what the state says, because it would really be unfair. Anybody that wants to use recreational marijuana already as it is has the right, I think, to plant up to 7 plants themselves within their own dwelling. And for us not to allow things to get out of hand is why I'm thinking that if we were to wait on whatever laws come into play with the state of Michigan, we would be protecting the public and their health by not allowing things like the vaping and everything. I mean, because the medical marijuana is very heavily regulated with the laws of the state of Michigan. And they are going to put some laws on recreational use as well. It's no secret that right now we have some children that are dying from vaping because they don't know what they're getting, because they're dealing with some unregulated stuff. I mean, you can't stop a grown person from doing whatever they choose to do, because as it is, the kids are getting old to it. And they don't know what it is. They're just indulging across America. But to put some type of regulation on this, I think would really
Thank you,
help us out.
thank you, Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Singleton.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm still trying to figure out, this is basically, and if I could, through the chair, to the attorney, this is for the establishing recreational marijuana businesses in the city, right?
Correct. Section 6.1 of the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. It says that it gives the municipality may allow a complete prohibition or limit the number of marijuana establishments within its boundaries. So it's not that it doesn't prohibit anyone from possessing in their own homes, possessing their I think it's up to 12 plants or 2.5 ounces, even in public. This is just to prohibit the recreational businesses. There's a micro business, like a microbrewery for marijuana. There's the ability to create a place to go and smoke marijuana, like a social club, and the regulations. So this would at least allow the city to put a halt on that unless and until the city decides to.
Till such time, some type of
Zoning.
regulation, zoning, or, what?
Point of clarity, I think they already smoking in the club.
Well, this would make it illegal.
This basically just buys some time to allow the governing body to come up with some type of regulations and stuff like this.
That's correct.
Now, you said earlier that opt in, opt out, or what, can you explain that again?
Well, right now, almost 900 Michigan municipalities have opted out. And there has been a lot of public outcry from some of those municipalities, but I think what those municipalities have been opting out to allow their municipality to create these regulations. And when they choose to opt back in, they do so under the ordinance that they're going to pass, like the city did with the medical marijuana. We have a pretty comprehensive medical marijuana ordinance within the city, as well as zoning. And so all we're doing now is we're allowing the city to do exactly what it did for medical, for recreational. And this act is, the Michigan Regulation and Taxation Act is specifically for recreational marijuana. It does not deal with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Facilities Act.
Thank you.
And the state haven't come up with any regulations?
They have some emergency regulations, like they have with the medical marijuana. Eventually, the emergency regulations for medical became the regulation, just the regulations. So,
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Singleton. Commissioner Henderson.
Thank you. Just one quick question, from the city manager to the attorney. With this particular act, we're looking at, as you said, regulating, so I understand, what we're doing with this particular ordinance. So we're just making sure that people are not just popping up places like this, just anywhere within the city limits. If we set a limit on how many, as we work to establish how many we're going to have in the city, and I think we've already done that. But does this prevent,
Two different things.
this has nothing to do with the medical marijuana and the numbers that we've established. Once the ordinance,
just the
once
recreational
the
side?
act, once the recreational ordinance or act becomes operative, any applicant can apply to the state for a permit or a license for recreational marijuana establishments. And if the city or municipality has not opted out, it becomes too late in a sense. So we've already, the city opens its door to having the floodgates open for applications that we won't be able to deny because we don't have an ordinance that sets out the regulations or restrictions.
Thank you. There's a point of clarity. I think we look kind of ridiculous tonight. We're charging the community $100 per person to be down here. Well, we could have did this at a free meeting on a Wednesday night and came back next Monday and voted on the same thing. Nobody gonna start a recreational marijuana place this week. And if they did, they would still have to come through the proper channels to even open up. So I think this makes us kind of, I mean, we harm the community by charging them $100 a head down here. Instead of taking that money and putting this for something for people, and we could have came down next Monday and handled the same part of business. I understand the closed session, what I'm saying, as far as this, city manager.
Mr. Chair, if you will recall, the attorney started by saying that the deadline is today. So it had to be done.
Thank you, city manager. But if I'm clear or not, and I just need to ask the city attorney one more question, then I'll go to the rest of the body. Did you say we can opt in or opt out whenever we want to?
It is, as long as the city commission votes and by majority vote, if they opt out, and then at a later date, once they are happy with a new ordinance with the regulations, then the vote can be put on the floor to opt in. And as long as the commission has the votes.
So my question again is the same thing. If next Monday we decided to opt out, can we still opt out?
You can, but you risk between now and then applications for recreational marijuana being filed with the state.
Problem that comes then is that you have applications that we've had for 7 months
No, that's medical marijuana.
already.
We don't have any recreational.
Is there a fast track for recreational?
Yeah.
Well, one, if there's no ordinance opting in or opting out, then it goes straight to the state, as long as they meet the state's requirements, which are lesser than the medical marijuana.
In 1 week?
These people, the applicants, I would probably guess, are jumping at the opportunities to file, because the applications, I believe, they can start to be processed by October 1st.
As my constituent, Commissioner at Large, Ron Singleton, say, seems to me like a knee-jerk reaction. C.F. Jones, Commissioner.
We're going in circles. This is no different than any other pop-up businesses. We wonder how they got here in the first place because we're paying attention. This has seemed like a preventive measures, no different than what we discussed before as far as the signage and whatnot, things we should have had in place before this point. Last week committee meeting also made us, as you say, look ridiculous because the co-drafter, or should I say redrafter, of a certain ordinance that was needed to be put in place that we as a body didn't quite understand and allow somebody else to try to make changes for us. That's making us look more ridiculous if we don't handle things in a proper manner. You're right. This right here is a preventive measure until we get everything that we want in writing, as we should have with the medical marijuana. So once we do get that right and make that vote, we're able to opt in and take part in this recreational side of this thing with the state. So to me, it makes perfect sense. I had to get a jump on it a little while ago, that we need to go ahead and vote on this, get it out the way, to keep pop-up businesses from showing up. If you've been paying attention to the gas stations, the gas station selling things, and I have to question that. They're selling things that look just like marijuana, but they CBD fused. So, yeah, have you seen with the trucks and whatnot, anything could pop up here with a peddler's license if we don't put a hold on it right now.
Thank you for your thoughts. Commissioner Henry.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure that we are understanding that what the process of opting back in will be. If it's just a ordinance, a changing of an ordinance, amending an ordinance, we don't need public hearings for that. All we need to do is to place it on the agenda and vote on it.
Correct, and if it's approved, it needs to be published.
Right, but,
Correct. Zoning ordinance needs the public hearing.
okay. Well, this is, basically what we asked the city manager to do for us. But we asked him to put a moratorium on the agenda for 6 months, for recreational. So this would probably be a little better because we might have more time. Sometimes we go a little slow, but I think this might be my answer, because we definitely want to make sure we control what group of people or what product or how much money we get. All of that, it should be in our control. So I'm definitely for this. Thank you.
City, Commissioner Sinclair.
Thank you, Chair. From a past experience in law enforcement, if you allow the state to make the decision for you, it ain't gonna be nice. We had problems with the bigger stores, beer and wine stores that we petitioned to not have it in certain neighborhoods, and the state said, too bad, that they just did it anyway, and it, continued to wreak havoc in the neighborhoods. So if we got opportunity to pause and put some regulations in place to make sure that it fits our community, then I think it behooves us to do that. We're not saying that you're never gonna do nothing, but you need to have some regulations. And I got a better understanding of what's trying to happen now. Everything's regulated. Cutting the grass is regulated. So we definitely need to make sure we have some type of say-so in the regulations is done. So if we don't do it now, and between, today and next meeting or next committee meeting, and those applications get in, what the state gonna say is they already in, they're subject to give them a license whether we like it or not. So we need to protect ourselves.
Commissioner, could you say what you're saying for the record, because that paper's crackling?
Sorry.
Mike, say what you're saying, and we couldn't, please, for the record.
What I'm saying is if we do, not do this now and wait till next week, and so, applications get in, it's in the state's hands, and the state has authority to say, hey, they don't have any regulations, you got in before they had regulations, and they will allow them to set up shop in your community without any regulations, their location, anywhere. So I'm saying it behooves us to wait, get us some regulations in place and have a say-so and how that business operates in our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams?
Thank you, Honorable Chair. And thank you, Commissioner Singleton. I concur. My question is, opting in or out, how does it benefit or not when it comes to this taxation portion of the whole medical marijuana business? Not medical, the whole recreational marijuana business. When it comes to the taxation of what is benefited.
Well, if the city opts out, while it's opted out, there is no benefit or, well, detriment, because so the benefit from, there's an excise tax of 10% that stems from the retail part of the recreational marijuana, not growers, not processors, but the retail side of it. That 10% goes to the state, and it's kept in a separate fund, and then 15% of that goes back to the municipalities.
10%?
Well, the excise tax is 10%. That 10% goes to a fund at the head state level. And then at some point, 15% is then proportioned out to those municipalities who've opted or who have not opted out.
Okay, so my question becomes, by us opting out, we are clearing ourselves for future revenue of those taxes that the state will collect?
As long as you opt back in,
Okay.
then that 10%.
Okay, so we're not stripping ourselves?
No.
Okay. All right. That's all we're doing.
Oh, city manager, would you speak to the benefit of us opting out of this? I mean, I feel like the city manager brought the ordinance. So there has to be some weight behind why and when this just happened, just come about. I would like to know I know the deadline was tomorrow, but just all of a sudden, why are we tying our hands in this matter?
Mr. Chair, the city attorney did an excellent job of explaining it. He explained it to me, and once I understood it, I made sure that we got it explained before it was too late.
Thank you, city manager. So I want to appreciate the city attorney for bringing forth the ordinance. So this was your idea?
It was discussed with the prior city manager, and because of the change in leadership, I made sure I didn't want Mr. Mitchell to not be aware of the deadline, and so that the city didn't lose the opportunity to make that decision itself.
That's excellent. It's good for you to do that. So it was your idea for us to opt out at this time?
It was my idea talk to the city manager about
The ordinance change, right?
the ordinance.
Okay, great, yeah. Thank you. Commissioner Henry.
Thank you, Chair. This ordinance speaks of a 10-day effective after this been, in the paper. Now, if the state's taking applications October 1st, are we gonna make that deadline?
I think once the city, if the city passes it tonight, regardless of when it becomes effective, because once the commission has voted, everyone is on notice. And then I think that allows the city to say that we're not taking applications because the city voted to prohibit that aspect.
So if it's the 10 days after we approve it, or after it's been listed in the paper?
Well, I think the best we have right now is to state that the city can deny applications or not to take applications because of the city commission's vote tonight, if it votes that way, regardless of when the ordinance takes effect after the publication. So I think.
All right, now, just for a point of clarity for those who are listening to the meeting. Thank you, Brother Hayward, we appreciate that. Now, those are excellent points you brought up, Commissioner Henry, and I want to appreciate that. If the orders don't take effect for 10 days and the deadline is tomorrow, should not we put immediately?
Well, by law, it does not become effective until the necessary time.
So October 9th.
I'm sorry?
It's going to take effect October 9th.
Officially, yes, but because the city commission voted tonight, and if it votes tonight to opt out, I think that's going to be sufficient to protect the city as the best it can under the circumstances.
But if it does not take effect till October 9th, and somebody sends an application to the state October 1st, you said there'll be problems.
But the
The
fact
ordinance does not take effect.
But if the city voted to opt, if the city votes to opt out tonight, then when the state contacts the city to determine if there's an ordinance opting in or opting out, the city can answer that the city commission voted to opt out of the city commission meeting or the act on September 30th, and it was published in the next paper the next day, and we're not taking applications.
So if the ordinance goes into effect October 9th, and they put it in October 1st, and they petition the courts, the judges will say that we're in the right.
I don't know what a court would say.
You don't know what the court will say.
I never know what a judge will say. I mean, I'm not a
Let's
judge.
finish that closed session.
So should we add?
Commissioner Henry.
Well, I'm just kind of reading the ordinance, and it talks of best interest of the city. Somewhere, you gotta know that this initiative was residential, voted by the citizens. So if I just heard that Benton Harbor prohibits recreational marijuana and no explanation in it, I'd be really mad about it. So this, I don't know if this ordinance is gonna be put in the paper. And I don't know how we're gonna explain it to the people, but we really do need to find some way to explain what this really is. And because they voted for it.
We gotta have order though. Gotta have order.
say
That out of order.
prohibited. It's just common sense. They make it, put a lot of stuff that in.
Brother Haywood, but we still have to have order.
You're right, sir.
I agree. Get on the radio and talk about it tomorrow.
I definitely will.
Commissioner C.F. Joe.
The reason been explained tonight, and we are supposedly the voices of those citizens. And it's our job to let them know that we have their best interests on how we vote on this tonight, as well as to educate them as far as what this is dealing with, as everything else we have done. So we done went around in circles with this. It's been explained more than once. And it's in our best interest. Now, if we leave this open, then complain about it later, then we're gonna start pointing fingers again. Especially with those that might be vacating these seats. So, we need to call for the question.
Support.
Hold a second.
The question's been called, and I
No,
supported that.
hold on,
And
sister.
that
It needs to be
is,
revised.
the question has been called, and I supported it, and.
There was still
he
discussion.
Called for the question.
There was still discussion going on.
No, he called for the question, I supported it, as long as there's
Can we
support,
have,
we can call for the question, that is how it goes, that's a point of order. Point of order, Chair,
point of order? does
point
not
of
mean
order,
that.
Chair. He called for the question, I supported it.
Point of
We can
order does
vote.
not mean that.
Point of order, point of order,
Point
point of order, and I object.
You don't have to object. Point of
I'm just
order don't
telling you,
mean
point
Hey,
of
y'all
order,
gonna have to back up on.
that.
I object.
As a point of clarity, city
He
clerk.
called for the question, I supported it.
We would need to vote on to close the debate.
Ah,
And it was approved, it was a move and second, we need to call.
My question becomes,
we're gonna keep the debate open, so call for it.
No, it was moved.
the point of clarity is, what are we voting on?
Right now, to close the debate.
Oh,
To close debate?
Yes.
Call for the question.
Commissioner Adams,
no.
Commissioner Henry,
No.
Commissioner Singleton,
No.
Commissioner Isom,
No.
Commissioner Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson,
No.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats.
No. Y'all wanna do it again?
Okay.
Let's go for it.
The next thing I would ask of the city attorney is this. Could you please explain the fact of right here where it states both regulation and enforcement policies and procedures? Do we have that somewhere in writing that we know what regulations and enforcement policies and the procedures are?
Well, currently, the city has no regulations or policies as it relates to to recreational marijuana. The state has its act, which is part of that 6.1 that's referenced in the proposed ordinance. But we also have no zoning.
So it says, like, from the state, it said, whereas the Benton City Commission has determined it is in the best interests of the city to prohibit. Now, what is marijuana?
Marijuana is spelled with the H, is the old, outdated manner in which the state uses this, as recognized as the spelling of marijuana. And so I just, in turn, keeping with the state's spelling, use the H.
I would ask of this body the same thing that my constituent, Commissioner Henry, who was and one of the forerunners and fighters for this, to do take into consideration that it was an overwhelming vote for recreational. And from all looks and purpose and intent, more people voted for marijuana than they voted for anybody on this body. So, my question becomes, in the best interest of who? And again, it came from the city attorney, which I respect you and I respect your office. But then we begin to say that it's in the best interest of the city. I would say it'd be in the best interest of the city to counteract some of these liquor licenses that they're popping up right across from churches and schools and everywhere else. and they buy them from out of
Point of
the
order,
city and bring them in Benton
Chair,
Harbor.
point of order.
So I would ask that we do bring this back to committee, a legislative committee or whatever committee comes up Wednesday. So we can, because it still says 10 days on there. I don't know why people just somehow believe that people can purchase property and start selling weed just everywhere. I mean, if you think they got enough power to just go to the state and then start selling, I just got a problem with that.
Okay.
Commissioner Simmons had his hand up. No, you're all
Sorry.
right. No, it's just commercial. Commissioner Simmons had his hand up and Commissioner Adams.
Still, saying that, without any regulations, and again, I have to rely, on the council, which, the consequences of doing something and not having the regulations, I think this is definitely, consensus that recreational marijuana is here, and voted in by the state, but I still think that citizens definitely would still want it regulated, and go back to your point, about the liquor stores. If you don't have any regulations, you'll be back saying the same thing about these recreational marijuana shops, popping up all over the place without any regulations.
Appreciate that.
So, I believe what happened, this probably should have been to us, a long time ago. I don't know how it got held up, and we get to the point where it's, we gotta do it, the deadline up on us, but, that ain't the first time that it happened to us, since I've been here. So, but it's one of them cases called rock and a hard place, and you have to, make some type of decision. I would rather err on the side of being in a position to regulate it than to not.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner. I would suggest this, just for the sake of time. Whereas the City of Benton Harbor Commission finds that there's a newly enacted Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, recreational marijuana, lacks clear direction from the state. The City of Benton Harbor and the municipality and citizens will not be accepting application until there is clear direction and enforcement policies and procedures.
That amendment to the ordinance.
Yeah, just scratch all this other stuff and say we will not be accepting applications.
I think that it should be clear cut that, because through the chair, I would not talk against those that actually voted for medical marijuana. And I don't know who those are that's in the best interest of, but it's not me
Can we say that,
and a lot of others.
City Attorney, whereas the City of Benton Harbor City Commission finds that newly enacted Michigan Regulation Taxation, the Marijuana Act, recreational marijuana lacks clear direction from the state, we will not be accepting any applications
At this time.
at this time.
The city commission can
Vote to amend.
vote to anything they want to say, whether or not that is sufficient enough to,
But who says this will be sufficient?
If I'm, okay,
well,
yeah.
because it says prohibits,
Well, it prohibits any application,
prohibits the,
but to speak on, to say the best interest of the city,
we can completely,
let's scratch that.
we can use just the city of Benton Harbor prohibits recreational, or prohibits the applications for any recreational marijuana establishments within its boundaries pursuant to the act, section 6.1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CF Jones had his hand up for quite a while.
First, let's remember what the city attorney said. He said this was brought up previous with a different individual. So it wasn't necessarily him acting upon himself. Also, I believe this is the phonetic spelling, close to the Indian, since, we are a native, area. It's saying Juana, not Hana, because the A is not in front of it. Thirdly, basically the best interest is that it's covering everything, the municipality and the citizens, because guess what? The citizens are not aware of this as far as the ruling, because that's why so many have been getting convicted, thinking it's easy to go ahead and get high because they voted on the recreational act, that they get these frivolous charges so far. So to me, it's encapsulating saying it's looking out for not only the city, but the city's citizens in both regulations and enforcement policies and procedures. So to nitpick and try to piece and par it right now is defeating the purpose. We need to go ahead and get this done and over with. Understandable. This is something that should have been done when we did the medical. So let's go ahead and do this right now. Handle it. Let's call for the question.
We did that already.
Again.
I've asked for an amendment. Nobody seconded that.
Thank you.
I'm calling that we do kind of amend this, and ask the question again that we scratch. And then for some reason, the state of Michigan says November 1st, 2019.
Okay. Now, what's the rush?
And the gentle lady from Harold Palladium, the gentle lady from Harold Palladium says,
Making the rule in the law.
brother,
That's what they said.
run for office, man.
I mean, if I was in the city, I would.
Okay, go to township.
That's
Thank you.
common sense across the board.
Appreciate it. So it says November 1st. November 1st is when the application starts. Can somebody get clarity on that real quick? For the state of Michigan, November 1st is when it starts.
Come November 1st, 2019, the Marijuana Regulation Agency will begin accepting business licenses, applications, and are likely to start approving business licenses by December 6, 2019. And you can find it anywhere within the state site.
Well, that's been updated since I last looked. Well, it was October.
So now it's November 1st and now it's December 16th.
But Honorable Chair, while we're on this, I think that it would do us right to do what the gentle lady had been begging me, and we talked about it several times when I was legislative chair, to put a moratorium in place for at least 4 to 6 months. Something that would not allow any businesses to open and operate. It doesn't have to get as critical as a ordinance to have to go back in and change something. I think that would do and serve the same purpose.
But if the dates have changed, my question becomes, what's the hurry?
What's the hurry?
Council Chair.
So are we gonna amend it? Are we gonna vote on it? Are we gonna table it? Send that, say, Commissioner.
So what is it, the attorney, is it November 1st?
It looks like the update is November 1st, from what I was able to Google. I mean, but the last I looked, it was October 1st.
Place. You're looking. I think that we could just put while we're on it, make a motion to put forth a moratorium on the recreational marijuana businesses that will not be allowed to open, operate, apply for a license until further notice of this commission.
That's what you're doing if you vote to prohibit this here, that would allow you to get all that in order. That's what this is doing, prohibited the state and anybody from coming in and trying to regulate it. It would prohibit it until you all make up the rules and the zoning regulations for anything that you have come in. That's all this is doing. Seriously, it's prohibiting any action. That's it. That's what this is doing, prohibiting anybody from doing anything.
Hey, look, wait a minute. And I've asked the audience, and I'm giving you an opportunity to speak. But we can't, we won't do this at the courthouse. We won't do this nowhere else at the city of Benton. City Commissioner Ron Singer.
Given the, new information that we do have, this November 1st is the date. I move that we table this to the legislative committee meeting for Wednesday.
City manager has a question. Well, there's support. City manager, there's been supported. There's a motion on the floor to table. City manager has something to say.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, before we make a gross error, I want to make sure of the date. All we're asking you to do is to protect yourself. If we make a mistake here tonight and find out it is tomorrow, it's too late.
Can we find out within the next, if 3 people, mouth 2 or 3 witnesses, let everything be established. I think we got one, the attorney, the young lady from the newspaper, said it was November 1st. No, she's been researching hard and heavy. The attorney said November 1st. Commissioner Adams said November 1st. Anybody else got any other date?
I will say that it started out, the original plan was for September. It got pushed back to October 1st, and it looks like now it's currently pushed back again to November 1st.
From the city attorney, it's November 1st. There's a motion on the floor.
Commissioner Isom,
What's the motion?
to table the item until.
To table it till Wednesday? Is it till Wednesday?
To
Commissioner?
Wednesday. That's the motion, till next Wednesday, or to
Till
this Wednesday.
this Wednesday?
Yes. To go before legislature.
Till Tuesday?
Wednesday,
Oh,
today is Monday.
That's the motion, it's already on the floor. Commissioner Isom,
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson,
No,
Commissioner Jones,
No.
Commissioner Singleton,
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson,
Yeah.
Commissioner Adams,
Yes.
Commissioner Henry,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seats,
yes.
motion carries.
That been all. I want to have communications from, we'll start with city attorney.
I have nothing to report.
Thank you. City clerk?
No report.
Thank you.
No
Police chief?
No portion.
City manager?
No report.
Thank you. Commissioner Harrelson?
Nothing yet.
Commissioner Henry?
What does it say? No comment.
Commissioner Isom?
There's something coming out tonight.
Commissioner Jones?
You good?
Say trust the process? I'm sorry, man, I apologize.
Once again, thank you for coming out. Nothing more to say than we need to do our due diligence, educating ourselves, educating the citizens and whatnot, so we don't clog up the process. If we have so much to say, we should have so much to give out to know, so that's it for me.
Commissioner Singleton?
They just like to add that, once again, this is one of those things that, you get shoved in your face, and say, hey, I mean, it's no fault of, I'm sure the current city manager or the staff here, but, those are one of those things that we had in the past that, it get bogged up, and then we don't, the communications, I always talk about, communications. If these things was going on some time ago, we should have known something by now. Even with the changing of the dates, we gotta be able to start sharing information in a timely manner, you know, because the sooner you know about it, the better chance you were able to make some type of reasonable decision on it. You know, when you don't get it like that, then it's a bunch of confusion. A 10-minute deal turn out to be an hour or more. So hopefully in the future that we can start getting things together where we can get information sooner than later. Where we can make better decisions. But to do something, without any regulations, I think would be disastrous. So, I think we got some time to get it to the table and get it vetted, ask us an input, and make something happen. But to do it without that, I think we would do ourselves a big disservice. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Honorable Commissioner. Commissioner Henderson.
No comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Henderson. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I always thank the president for taking time out of his schedule to come down and see what's going on in your community and how it's affecting you or not. One thing I'm grateful for is that this didn't come in the form of a book, like the things that I saw come forth before I became a commissioner. And was actually voted on, and nobody had read it, researched it, nothing, just vote. I'm just glad that we are deciding not to do business as usual. Even as a Brownfield Authority board member, we had books that just come before us and was expected to just vote on stuff, to just say yes. But that's why we can table things. And for that, I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Just in closing, I want to thank everybody who came out tonight to make this meeting possible. I do want to suggest that we do take our health important. A lot of young people dying in our community. There's a lot of funerals going on. We've lost some real good people. And if you start feeling any kind of chest pain or something, try to get it the fast thing you can to Kalamazoo or South Bend, because some reason that people are being treated and sent home, and then they died at the house. I would ask even of our beloved citizens to start taking a look. Because if they're going to Lakeland and they're sending them home and you sick, and you sick, find somewhere else to go. Because it might not be, might be your last chance. I lost my neighbor, lost 2 of my dear friends, 3 of them now are gone, and it was all some health-related issue. So please, it behooves us to do what's right by the body, or the body will take care of you. The mayor had an event tonight that he had to attend, or had some business he had to take care of. And I'm grateful that this body decided to do what it needed to do. I just suggest that we as a body somehow get the information a little bit above time and then find out really what the citizens want. To say you represent the citizens and the citizens don't know what you're doing, I think that's kind of counterfeit. So I do want to appreciate those who come on a weekly visit. Do appreciate Ms. Kennard for coming. She forgot my plant this week. She said she would bring me a plant. I still ain't got the plant. I want one of the real green ones. I don't want nothing that bud too much. Bud start getting you in trouble. Do also want to thank Mr. Marvin Haywood. He is a hard charge in our community. He means what he says. Everybody who's here, Mr. Hadley, business owner, resident, Venezuelan pastor, Hoy, being here. He's started a church over there on Broadway and Pipestone, and just doing fairly well. The lights are on all day long. So we do appreciate that in our community. And anything else somebody's doing well in our community, I think we need to lift it up and make sure that everybody knows what's going on in our community. We have we got a, I won't say contract, but we got other people who are here who do business in Benton Harbor. We just need to make sure that we lift up the ones that are doing business in Benton Harbor. I do appreciate the police chief for his hard work and determination. There's a lot of violence going on. Hopefully the city commission can partner with our police department to get these guns off the street and find out where these guns are coming from. Because there's a major epidemic with these guns, and for some reason people ain't playing with them no more. Back when I was coming up, they like to fist fight. Now they load them up and shoot. So let's pray for our community, and let's support those who are in office. I want to say that everybody does what needs to do to make the city of Benton Harbor go great. Thank you. This time we will be need a motion for closed session.
Enter into closed session.
Need a motion to enter closed session for the stated reason of Adams outdoor signs
Not this.
versus this. No, that's. Closed session with Mr. Adams, outdoor litigation. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Sampson?
Yes.
Commissioner Henderson? Yes. Commissioner Adams?
Yes.
Commissioner Henry?
Yes.
Commissioner Harrelson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Isom?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogt?
Yes.
No, everybody just.